here with you on this lovely Sunday afternoon. I'm here in my lovely Brooklyn apartment, and wow, it is so good to be back. And I am so happy to be here with all of you. I have been recovering from kind of a medical situation. They say you're not supposed to discuss medical details about your life on YouTube. That is a piece of advice that is generally given, so I'm not going to get into great detail about it. But I have been resting and recovering. Haven't had the strength to live stream with my community. And every day I was sitting there and just thinking, when am I going to have the strength to get back on YouTube and engage with my lovely community? But now, Sunday, here I am. I am drinking the first unnamed diet beverage I have had in 10 days. 10 days I went without drinking unnamed diet beverage. Probably a good purge for my body. It was probably very good that I went for 10 days without it. But now that my body is back at full speed, I'm sitting here with unnamed diet beverage, talking to my community, and I am delighted. I missed all of you and all the messages I got from you. Oh my goodness. The fact that so many of you were saying to me, when are you going to stream again? What's up? Where you been? Oh, that was so touching to me. That meant the world to me. You don't know how much that meant to me. So, thank you everyone for your patience. Thank you for keeping track of me. Thank you for sending happy birthday messages to my amazing wife. You guys are amazing. Thank you, Kyle Jones, for your super chat. Much appreciated. I am back. I am back. I am sitting here. I've got the windows open, so you may be hearing some street noises from Brooklyn, New York. The windows are open, so if you're hearing some outside street noises, that's what it is. If it gets to be too much, I may close the window. But until then, we're going to have the windows open, so you may be hearing some New York City street noise. On that note, folks, the way we generally do things here is I give my opening remarks, and then from there, after I give my opening remarks, we do our roll call, where I call you out as I see you, names and locations. Then I answer your super chat questions. And I'm sure since I've been gone for so long, you all have many super chat questions. So there you go. Should Marxists encourage people to read books written by Giovanni Gentile and Nick Land? Giovanni Gentile, Nick Land. All right, wrote it down. See, there's a question. I wrote it down. And I'm sure you've all got plenty of questions. So as they come in, I'll be writing them down. So folks, it has been a while since we streamed. I've been posting little clips here and there to keep activity on the channel. How do you engage with people who claim to be anti-capitalist but also anti-communist? Engage with anti-capitalist and anti-communist. All right. China owes its success to Western. Owes success to Western investment. Wow, very good. Very good question. All righty. What else? Yes, I'm just so glad to be back. So I'm gonna open my remarks. Why was the Comintern dissolved? Comintern dissolved. Very good question. Why? All right. Like I said, keep the super chats rolling in. I'll answer them in the second half of the show. I'm glad you're here. Post this on Facebook, post this on Twitter, post this on Reddit, post this everywhere videos are posted. Make this a bigger community. I am always happy to answer your questions. The more here, the more fun we have. Thank you for all your kindness and patience while I was recovering. Thank you for sending happy birthday messages to my wife. Thank you for reaching out to me. Thank you for watching the little videos, clips that I posted on the days I was gone. All right, left libertarians. And on that note, let's just jump right into it. A few things happened while I was gone. Thing number one that I wish to discuss. is something that is so stupid. So stupid, I almost don't want to just talk about it. I almost don't want to address it. Joe Biden called Russian President Vladimir Putin a quote-unquote killer. Remember that? Called him a killer. Folks, what is a killer? What is a killer? A killer is one who takes life. Okay. Now, Vladimir Putin is the leader of a state. And what is a state? Lenin made clear that the state is a monopoly on armed force. Independence. Melania. Scotland. Monopoly on armed force. A government has the right to kill, and you don't. That's what a state is. That is the definition of the government. Government's very existence is defined by their ability to take life, right? If I go out and kill somebody, that's murder. But the state has the monopoly on armed force and therefore has the right to kill people. Now, obviously, there are many instances in which governments kill people that we now would consider to be a violation of human rights, right? If someone's executed without due process, right? Some people, like myself, think the death penalty ought to be gotten rid of. I don't think the death penalty is a good practice to engage in. But regardless, only governments can practice the death penalty. If individuals go around executing people because they deem them to be guilty of crimes, then that's not legitimate, right? Then they go to prison, right? The state has the right to kill people. You don't. Every state in the world has killed people and has carried out its monopoly on armed force, right? Every government in the world. There is not a government on the world that has not killed people. Now, at this point, Russia does not practice the death penalty. It has basically been indefinitely suspended in the country. They still have the constitutional ability to execute people and to carry out the death penalty, but Russia does not practice the death penalty. They've put an indefinite moratorium on it. The United States, on the other hand, we practice the death penalty very liberally in some states, like Texas, pretty mildly and restrained in some other states like California. Here in New York, we don't have the death penalty. We do have federal executions. All right. Rad libs. Transphobe. Right? I mean, but look, Vladimir Putin, you have to remember, took office in Russia at a time when capitalism and neoliberal free market policies had wrecked the country. Under the leadership of Boris Yeltsin, all kinds of free market libertarian policies were implemented in Russia. Shock therapy economics, right? You can read about this in Philip Thayer's book, Europe Since 1989. You can read about this in Naomi Klein's book, The Shock Doctrine. You can read about it. Michael Parenti has a very good book called Black Shirts and Reds, where he goes into great detail about the fall of the Soviet Union. The fall of the Soviet Union, haven't seen that documentary. The fall of the Soviet Union was an economic disaster, and as a result of the fall of the Soviet Union, you had mass unemployment in Russia, sometimes like 30% unemployment. You had elderly people starving on the street. You had a huge rise in drug use and organized crime, huge rise in human trafficking, huge rise in heroin, and that's the situation that Vladimir Putin took office in. You also had a huge separatist movement in Chechnya, where Wahhabi extremists armed by Saudi Arabia and covertly backed by the United States were trying to break Chechnya away and were committing all kinds of terrorism. Competing definitions of freedom. So, in that context, as Putin came into office, with Russia in a complete mess, with organized crime everywhere, with terrorist groups everywhere, would it be shocking that in order to try and stabilize the situation, to crack down on organized crime, to crack down on terrorist separatist groups, is it possible that in the process of stabilizing the country, amid that chaos, that the security forces in Russia, got into very serious conflicts with these drug gangs, got into various serious conflicts with these, Chechen separatist groups and Wahhabi fanatical extremists? Is it possible that people died in confrontations between the Russian state trying to stabilize the country and these extremist forces? Of course. And, Russia has gone to help the Syrian government and to help the Syrian government fight al-Qaeda and fight the extremists backed by the United States. So yes, there have been instances in which the state, the Russian state, led by Russia's president, Vladimir Putin, was involved in situations in which life was taken. I don't think anyone would deny that. However, how is that supposed to be this bum bum bum, we got him statement? Think about it. All right. Socialism in Africa. How is this he's a killer. He's a killer. I mean, what does this mean? That he presides over a state, he leads a state that in the process of governing, engaged in policies where at some point life was taken, whether it was the life of terrorists and extremists in Syria trying to overthrow the Syrian government, whether it's the life of Chechen separatist extremists in Chechnya, that were trying to, kidnap people and torture people and murder people, whether it was drug gangs that are bringing heroin into the country. At some point, the Russian state, under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, took somebody's life. I don't dispute that. I don't know anyone who would. Why is that a gotcha? Because our America never kills people. Oh, gee golly, the American state never kills nobody. Oh, boy. But Putin is a big, scary meanie, and he's a killer. But America never does nothing wrong. I mean, it's just like the fact that this is considered a gotcha moment. Like, think about this for a minute. When Obama was president, he conducted daily drone strikes. Every day, he would get together and they would have a kill list of people that would get killed by drones. It would be their names. And Obama said he prayed about it. He prayed about it. He prayed about it, discussed it with God, the Almighty, killed him. No due process, nothing. All kinds of international bodies said this drone program where you're killing people with these flying killer robots from the sky. They don't get a trial. They don't get a chance to defend themselves. They're not in the room. They don't even get to know they're on the kill list. But Barack Obama says, I prayed about it. His name's on the list. Boom. Killed him. Right? That was what happened. When Joe Biden was vice president, Obama was vice president, they had a daily kill list. And there was a U.S. citizen who ended up on the daily kill list. So, if you had said Barack Obama is a killer, you would have been right. In fact, he had a daily kill list. And in fact, not only that, but he staged a color revolution in Libya and carried out a situation where a great African leader, Muammar Gaddafi, the leader of Libya, the country that had the highest life expectancy on the African continent, a good friend of the Black Panther Party, a good friend of the Black liberation struggle in the United States, a good friend of the Irish freedom struggle, the IRA, a good friend of the Palestinians, a good friend of people all over the world fighting for their national liberation. Gaddafi was very, very brutally killed. And Hillary Clinton laughed about it and said, we came, we saw, he died. So if you wanted to say that Hillary Clinton was a killer, you'd be right. You wanted to say Barack Obama was a killer, you'd be right. John Lennon, Jane Fonda, radicalization. That's a good question. Fonda. Like, the entire insult depends on you being so naive about American imperialism and what it does all around the world that it's like, George Stephanopoulos asks Joe Biden, hey, is Vladimir Putin a killer? And he says, yeah, a killer. And it's like, gotcha. I mean, it's so ridiculous. Joe Biden has conducted airstrikes against Iranian forces in Syria, right? In Syria, where the Syrian government, the internationally recognized government, has requested that the Iranians come and help them fight against al-Qaeda, fight against the terrorists. They're in the country with the permission of the government, and Joe Biden carried out airstrikes and killed Iranians legally in Syria engaging in anti-terrorist operations. Killed them, murdered them, supposedly in response to what some Iranian-backed forces had done in Iraq. So he killed them. Is Joe Biden a killer? I would say so. Right? I mean, Joe Biden is doing that. The U.S. troops in Syria, you have to remember, have no permission to be there. Absolutely no legal permission to be there. They're violating Syria's territorial integrity. Trump had them there to seize their oil. U.S. boots on the ground in Syria is a complete violation. This is unbelievable. The only way that you can hear that statement, that statement that, Vladimir Putin's a killer, and go like, you got him, is if you just don't think. And that's what they depend on you doing. They don't want you to think, right? The world is supposed to be black and white. There's supposed to be good guys and bad guys. U.S. imperialism, Joe Biden, good guy, right? Kamala Harris, good woman. Vladimir Putin, bad guy. Xi Jinping, bad guy. Joe Biden, good. Joe Biden, good. Vladimir Putin, bad. That's the level you're supposed to think. It's supposed to be like caveman thinking. And so when you hear that, it's supposed to be this like gotcha moment. But here's the other thing. We all know what that statement was really about. Folks, if you were paying attention, you'll remember when Donald Trump did the infamous Super Bowl interview with Bill O'Reilly. Remember that? Donald Trump, during the Super Bowl, did an interview with Fox News host, and now disgraced, I should say, former Fox News host, Bill O'Reilly. During that interview, he said something. Bill O'Reilly pressed Donald Trump on the Russiagate allegations and Putin or whatever. And Bill O'Reilly said to Donald Trump, but Putin's a killer. And Donald Trump responded and said, do you think this country is so innocent? Right? And of course, you're not allowed to say that, right? Donald Trump, because he was being attacked for having a slightly less hawkish Trump was no anti-imperialist as we saw, but being slightly less excited about confrontation with Russia. He was being challenged on television, and he responded with, do you think this country is so innocent? That's what he said, right? And Biden being asked by George Stephanopoulos, is Vladimir Putin a killer? And saying, yes. What that is a repudiation of that moment from Donald Trump. It was planned. And it was a way to say, don't worry, I, Joe Biden, am not in any way like Trump. I am not reluctant to go to war. I'm not reluctant to have a confrontation with Russia. It was staged. Obama Biden had a 90% civilian death rate too. It was staged. And that's really what was going on there. And again, it's one of these things that it depends on you not thinking. It depends on you being very, very, very shallow in your understanding of world events. You've got to think that the United States has never harmed anybody, that the United States has never done anything wrong, and that it's just it's a huge amount of naivete, and I'm extremely disappointed. It comes after yet another report of alleged meddling in the elections that contains no proof. Just we're supposed to believe it, because they said it, right? They said it. They've got high confidence. They got high confidence. They don't present any proof of this alleged Russian meddling in the last election. But, just another one of these reports from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. They churn it out, and we're just supposed to go, they said it, so it must be true. Right, and based on this report that they've got high confidence that Russia somehow meddled in the election, and we're supposed to believe it, and now, Putin's a killer, and then Joe Biden falls down the stairs, and I mean, my goodness, folks, my goodness. Folks, the behavior of the Biden administration in the first 3 months has been highly erratic. 1 minute they're saying We don't want to engage. We're not going to use force to try and overthrow governments ever again. That was a big mistake from the USA, and we're not going to do that ever again. The next minute, they're escalating with Russia and escalating with China, and they don't know what they're doing. I have a feeling, folks, that I think there is a lot going on beneath the surface right now that we are not aware of. I'm just being honest, folks, okay? January 6th shocked the country. And, how exactly what went down on January 6th went down, we may never know. There are many aspects of what happened. There are many speculation about who did what and who did what, why were doors open and why did this happen and who was leading the details of exactly how January 6th came down and who knew it was going to happen, who didn't know it was going to happen, who allowed it to happen, who didn't allow, tried to stop it, who knew what. It's going to be a long time before all the details come out. And we may never really know the truth. But the fact that that happened at all shows that beneath the surface in the United States, within what they call the deep state apparatus, within the FBI, within the CIA, within the major intelligence agencies, within the government, within the business community, within the local police, within the border patrol, within the military, there is a huge amount of disagreement. Stuff like that doesn't happen under normal circumstances. I've been to many protests in D.C. Now that I'm a journalist, I don't go to protests anymore. But back in the day, I went to many protests in Washington, D.C. And I can guarantee you that if a crowd of me and my protester buddies had tried to go into the Capitol, we wouldn't have got anywhere near it, okay? What happened, what is it? Uneven and combined development. What happened on January 6th, no matter how it happened, because I don't know how it happened. There are so many weird things about it. Regardless of how it happened, the fact that it took place reveals that there is a huge amount of disagreement beneath the surface. There's an economic crisis right now. There's mass unemployment. The country is still pretty much locked down. There's a lot of anger beneath the surface. There are disagreements within the deep state. And it appears to me that the Biden administration's primary task right now is trying to hold things together and get control of the situation before they can begin to start moving ahead internationally. They have some very, very, very extreme plans. I am convinced that Kamala Harris, if you read my book, Kamala Harris and the Future of America, the final section, when I talk about the international stage and the Hillary Clinton State Department and the mentality that they foment, the third section of this book, I talk about what Kamala Harris represents. Kamala Harris was not popular as a Democratic presidential candidate. She got less than 1% of the vote, but yet she is now the vice president. And she was put into that position for a reason, by a very specific faction, tied in with Silicon Valley, tied in with the forces that want global unrest and destabilization. And that's Kamala Harris. And folks, Kamala Harris is not acting like a normal vice president. It is not normal for the vice president to be standing next to the president every time he talks. If you ever see Joe Biden talk, Joe Biden will be up there talking, and who's standing there right next to him? Kamala. Kamala's standing there right next to him. That is not normal. It's not normal. Trump did not have Mike Pence standing next to him every time he spoke on national television. Joe was not there standing next to Obama every time Obama spoke. Right? This is not normal. She's job shadowing, basically. She's in all the same meetings because it's only a matter of time before she assumes the presidency. And everyone knows that. Everybody knows that. Joe Biden has referred to her as President Harris, right? President Harris the other day. I was talking to President Harris. He knows it. He knows it. And that's not the first time that he's made that slip up, right? She's there for a reason. She's in all the meetings. She's job shadowing because it's only a matter of time. And Joe Biden has to know this on some level. And I think a lot of the erratic behavior is the fact that there are many different factions that are that are talking to him and making demands on him, and he's trying to hold the country together. But it's Kamala. Kamala is the one who came in with the what do you want to call it? She came in with the hatchet. She came in with the toolbox. She's the one who's there to do the job. Joe is a placeholder. He's a placeholder. He's old and he's tired. And all it will take to remove him, all it will take to remove him is just have staffers start leaking to the press. Oh, he's got Alzheimer's. He forgets where he is sometimes. Whether it's true or not, if that comes out in the media, he'll be stepping down in a few days. Furthermore, we all know that Joe Biden does not have a very good Me Too record. Right? When it comes to touching women, Joe's got a little bit of a something to answer for. Now, right now, the media just kind of pretends they don't know about it. The media just pretends, oh, well, we never heard of that. Tara Reid, who, what? We don't know about that. All it takes, the media just has to suddenly do a couple stories on it, put what's already out there on mainstream media. Joe Biden will be out in a few days. Joe Biden is barely president. There has never been a president in U.S. history who has been less president than Joe Biden. Joe Biden is he's got a situation. He's got a situation where he has very, very little job security. Joe Biden is not, he's a president who doesn't know if he'll have his job on Monday morning. I don't know if you've ever had a situation like that. It's not pleasant, right? If you've ever been working and the company might be closing down and there's rumors going around about layoffs and you don't know when you come in the next morning if you're going to have a job. That's Joe Biden's situation. Joe Biden knows very well he could come in tomorrow and they could say, Joe, you're done. You're done. We can do it the easy way or the hard way. And he knows that. Joe Biden is the most precarious president in American history. He looks senile. He looks like he's got Alzheimer's. He looks like he's got dementia. He's tired. He can barely get through a speech. Kamala's standing there right next to him, ready to do the job the second that he steps down. He's precarious, and he's standing there, and he knows this. He knows at any point they could come to him and say, you're done. You're done. And he knows that, and he knows they probably will do it at some point. Now, probably because what Kamala is planning is going to be very controversial and very divisive. They are waiting for things to calm down. My suspicion is that because Joe is old and tired and falls down and wear a mask, just wear a mask. And they need somebody to talk that way until things get under control. But when they're ready to move, Kamala will take office, and it'll be a very different tone from the presidency. She will get out her cleavers and her hatchet, and she will get to work doing what she was brought into office to do, which is fomenting global unrest and chaos to tear down rivals and secure the rule of Wall Street and London around the world. Some foreign policy thinkers that the U.S. needs to pursue rapprochement with Russia to disentangle China. Okay. Russia. China. Divide. All right. Very good. Very good. But look, that's the situation here. So, and look, you can compare Joe Biden in a lot of ways to Jimmy Carter, right? Jimmy Carter was president, and when he was president, he was all about the CIA. He called himself a student of Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was the Cold War strategist of U.S. imperialism. And he would do these fireside chats, and he would be so calm and friendly. I know you're upset, America. I know you're upset. I'm Jimmy Carter. I'm your president. I hear you. And it was about, presenting an image of the United States. The United States had just lost the Vietnam War. The United States was losing influence around the world. Europe was angry with the United States. So they put an old man who looked like he wasn't threatening at all. Just Jimmy Carter. They put Jimmy Carter in office, and he wore a sweater. When it got cold, he put a sweater on instead of turning up the heat. He wore a sweater. And they put Jimmy Carter up there to send a message to Europe, to send a message to countries around the world. We're not the bad guys you think we are. We're not extremists. We're not terrorists. We're not, fanatical Cold Warriors. Nixon is out of office. Vietnam War's over. It's going to be okay. All right? All right. All right. Writing it down. That's the purpose that Biden serves, right? And I almost wonder if that falling down, in front of the media when he's getting on the plane there, I almost wonder if that was staged, because that would fit that image, right? They're trying to present a United States that's not threatening and scary. They want, all the European allies, the NATO countries that Trump alienated and offended. They want them to start, cooperating with the United States again. They want all the Muslims around the world that the USA uses as proxies, like the Muslim Brotherhood and the various Wahhabi extremists, to not think the United States is viciously Islamophobic and hates Muslims anymore, right? So they'll start working with American intelligence more, and they want the United States to look less threatening. So having an old man up there who looks tired and, it's part of the image. Now, my feeling, though, is that this is kind of truth and reconciliation for the Trump years. This is, just like Jimmy Carter was in a lot of ways truth and reconciliation for the 1960s, right? The Vietnam War was over, the Civil Rights Movement. He was bringing the country together. Joe Biden is trying to be the truth and reconciliation president for the Trump years. He's trying to be truth and reconciliation, and he serves their purpose right now. Kamala would not be good right now for what they're trying to do, right? Kamala with her, mean prosecutor, crazy extreme, she wants to prosecute people, that little girl was me. She wouldn't be. That's not the tone they're going for right now. They got old Joe up there. That old Joe, he wears a sweater and, wear a mask. Just wear a mask. Just wear a mask. They got him up there, and he's trying to hold things together while they deal with COVID. They get the vaccine out there. They deal with whatever the hell is going on in the back room with the deep state and with all the divisions in the U.S. ruling class. And when they get their cards in order, and when things are stable enough, then Joe suddenly says, I've got Alzheimer's. I'm going to go play golf. Or maybe he doesn't go so peacefully, and suddenly we start hearing about Tara Reade, and we start hearing about his record with women, and White House staffers are testifying about things that go on behind the scenes, and suddenly, one way or another, Kamala is no longer job shadowing in the White House cabinet meetings. She's in the job. And she has a very different tone. She has a very different tone, and it'll take on a very, very different character. The presidency will go from truth and reconciliation to chaos and global revolution for capitalism very, very quickly. Kamala Harris was put in by the Hillary Clinton State Department faction. She was put in by the Silicon Valley fascists. She was put in by the folks who want to carry out a global campaign of destabilization. They want to tear down every anti-imperialist state. They want to tear apart Russia, tear apart China, tear apart all the Bolivarian socialist countries of Latin America, and they want to do it in the name of social justice and liberation, and they want a wave of unrest that'll make the Arab Spring look tame. That's what they want. They want a wave of global unrest to secure the rule of Wall Street and sweep away all the forces of opposition to them in the world. That's what Kamala Harris is brought in to do. She has been brought in to be a neoliberal global revolutionary for capitalism. Biden serves a very different purpose. So when the needs of imperialism shift from the needs of Biden to the needs that can be fulfilled by Kamala Harris, things are going to change. Now, I wanted to touch on a few things, folks. Because now that China is so much the target of American media and its opposition, and at this point, China is just, hated so much in American media, just 24/7, hate China, China bad. It's just all we hear constantly in the United States. We need to talk about something because I am so sick and tired of hearing this cliche about China. That these people, these libertarians, these advocates of free market capitalism, you'll even hear like so-called leftists make this argument. That China was, under Mao, China was communist and it was poor. And then, in 1978, Deng Xiaoping came in and it was capitalist and China got rich. Right? Communism equals poor. Capitalism equals rich. What could be wrong with that argument? That argument is so wrong on so many levels. It is so wrong on so many levels. I don't know where to begin. But I'm gonna point out one of the most obvious flaws in that argument. China is not capitalist. China is not capitalist. Now, maybe you don't agree with me. You say, oh no, Caleb, they're not pure communists. They're okay, put that aside for a moment. The way libertarians mean capitalism, China is definitely not capitalist. Right? Right. Carter went out with the Islamic Revolution of Iran. Biden will be out too. U.S. out of the Middle East. Kamala in or out. All right. Yeah. Biden, Carter, Iran. I'll address that. Iran. Folks, in China, they have huge government-run banks. In China, they have huge state-run industries. In China, they have 5-year economic plans. In China, even the private sector is basically controlled by the state. Huawei Technologies, huge corporations, the steel industry, a lot of these things are technically private, but they are controlled by the state. The state basically subsidizes them, and so they depend on government subsidies, and they get direction from the state and told to do what the state wants them to do. The Chinese economy does not function according to market logic. It does what the state says. The Chinese Communist Party is in control, not the chaos of the market. That is abundantly clear. If you look at is America truly capitalist and democratic? Right, USA, truly capitalist and democratic. And libertarians, they think that Obamacare is communism, that private health care in the United States, getting the slightest regulation by the government, is full communism. They think income tax makes America socialist, but they look at China and say, oh, it's capitalist. That is so ridiculous. Now, I maintain that China is a socialist society, but even if you don't think that they're definitely not a libertarian society. The amount of government involvement. All right, what is this? Libya versus Nigeria. The amount of government involvement in the Chinese economy is massive. Massive. Right? And thank you, Fluff. The amount of state involvement in the Chinese economy is massive. Just massive. Massive. I mean, the government is heavily involved in the Chinese economy. It is not a libertarian free market country. Now, if you point this out, they will say, okay, sure. But the government, there's more free markets. There's more free markets now in China. There's more of a market sector, much more of a market sector now, a far bigger market sector in China today than there was during the Mao era, and they're much wealthier today than they were during the Mao era. So therefore, that's an argument for the free market brings prosperity. And here's the problem with that, right, folks? You know, the other day, it was very cold in my bedroom. So I turned the heater on to adjust, and I got more comfortable. So therefore, I should light my bedroom on fire, because that proves that more heat is always the answer. Now, is that correct? No. Right? China had a state-run economy under Mao. China still has a state-run economy. But in 1978, they adjusted the state-run economy and the way it worked. They adjusted the state-run economy and added a market sector. And as a result, MLs versus Maoists, As a result, China's much more prosperous. That is not an argument for total unregulated capitalism, right? Just like, oh, my room got more comfortable when I turned the heat on, is not an argument for walking on the sun, okay? Libertarians want total deregulation of the U.S. economy, right? They want prisons for profit because it's always better if you have private corporations do something, even if it's prisons. They want military contractors. They want charter schools for profit. They want to get rid of the minimum wage. They want complete deregulation of the economy. They want basically the government to just tell the American people to go screw themselves, right? And that's what they want. They want total unregulated capitalism. And they look at the success of China post 1978. Post 1978, the success of China as an argument for that. Because, oh, look, they have more markets now, so therefore markets are always the answer. That is not logical. It is not logical by any means. All right, peak oil. All right, it's not logical by any means, and I don't understand how they let them get away with this, right? And you'll notice when they're demonizing China, they will point out that there's no such thing. They'll straight up say there's no such thing as a private company in China. They'll say that when they're trying to demonize China. They'll say there's no such thing as a private company in China. But then when it's time to argue about communism, well, China only became successful because it's capitalist. Well, if there's no such thing as a private company in China, how is it capitalist? Explain that one to me, right? I mean, I'm sick of this. I'm so sick of this. If every thing that we want in the United States, we can't have because it's communism. Oh, food stamps for low-income children. You can't have that. That's communism. Oh, not having people get in student debt for hundreds of years. Oh, can't do that, right? Giving people education. That's communism. Oh, okay, right? Letting people see a doctor when they're sick. Nope, can't do that. That's communism. But China, where the government runs the banks, where the government runs the major industries, where the government, controls the private companies, is capitalism and proves that capitalism is the best system. How do people let them get away with this? This is not logical at all. There is nothing logical about that statement. It doesn't make any sense, right? In the United States, every government reform and program is declared communistic by the same people who then look at China and say that China, oh, they're capitalist. How do they get away with this? And then they say, well, it's more capitalist now. And no, it adjusted. The socialism adjusted, right? There is more of a market sector in China. There's a lot more private companies. There's a lot more foreign investment. But let me ask you this, right? If China's situation proves that more foreign investment and more deregulation naturally makes countries wealthier, why isn't Haiti wealthy, right? Haiti has deregulated everything. Haiti, under NAFTA, they lost their food sector. Now they import all their food from the United States. Haiti, free market Haiti has deregulated everything. Haiti should be a paradise, right? Nigeria, the top oil exporting country in Africa. All the ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, and Chevron, all the big corporations are there investing in Nigeria. It's a free market country. Their oil is being exploited by the Western corporations. Why is Nigeria dirt poor, right? It's just foreign investment from Western corporations. Free markets make countries rich, right? Honduras, right? There's a country, right? Totally free market, should be a paradise, right? All over the third world, you find countries that are way, way more free market than China, and they're still dirt poor. Right? I'm just being real. Look, India is way more free market than China, right? During the 60s and 70s in India, they had, kind of a Bonapartist and Soviet-aligned state, but especially during the since the 90s, India has been neoliberal, free market. The farmers there are in rebellion against the cuts and such. So India should be 10 times wealthier than China because it's 10 times more free market. This This doesn't work. The reason that China is successful is because the Communist Party has used the free market to benefit their long-term goal of making China a more prosperous country. That's why China is successful, is because the Chinese Communist Party has used market mechanisms to make China wealthier, not market mechanisms magically doing it on their own. Unbelievable. MMT, climate reparations. All right. Reparations, Green New Deal. So, and you can go. There are many countries around the world that are way, way more free market than China and way, way poorer. Meanwhile, China, despite, yes, having a very big market sector, having lots of capitalism, still has a huge amount of state control over its economy and is very prosperous. So I'm sick of this argument. I'm really sick of it. I saw that PragerU made a video about this. I'm thinking about doing like a very careful rebuttal of that video because I'm just so sick of hearing this. I am just so sick and tired of hearing this. It's not logical. China is not an argument for free market capitalism. The amount of government involvement in China's economy is massive. The amount of state control in China is massive. The private sector isn't really private. And people only get away with this. They only get away with this because no one will get up and say what's obvious, right? Because the left buys into the same kind of thinking. The so-called left. I'm sure we got super chats here about it. So, folks, before I conclude my opening remarks, I just want to say, ever since I've started doing these lives, I've had a very consistent theme on here. The theme is we need a government of action to fight for working families. The theme is that human civilization is in decay. It's falling apart. Society is getting poorer. There's instability around the world. Here in the United States, families are being destroyed by opioids. Poverty, unemployment is out of control. They're unpaving the roads. The water's not being properly purified. The violence, the crime. The country is falling to pieces. The world is in shambles. And what we need, more than anything, is what built civilization in the past: statecraft. The government has an obligation to serve the people. Right? If you look at the Dark Ages throughout Europe, after the fall of the Roman Empire, you have the Dark Ages. In the Dark Ages, people were considered to be property. People were considered to be objects that just had to serve those above them. Serfs, they just had to serve the landowner. Commoners just had to serve the king. And things started to change. The Dark Ages started to end with a new paradigm that emerged, when suddenly you got a notion that the government, the rulers, the kings, the queens, the monarchs, had an obligation to serve the people. The Renaissance, you talk about, in Italy, you talk about in Germany, you talk about in Britain, the Tudor monarchy, you got the music of Bach and Beethoven. You got the brilliance of Leonardo da Vinci. You got Kepler and Copernicus. You got Shakespeare. You got the birth of Western civilization. When all across Europe, in Italy, in Germany, in so many places, in Poland, in Russia with Leibniz, Britain, you got this notion that suddenly you had governments that said, no, we have a job to do. We have to start making life better for the people. We have to start funding scientific research. We have to start promoting breakthroughs in art and music. It was suddenly the governments suddenly woke up and said, you know what? We should govern. There was a change in how governments operated that brought Europe out of the Dark Ages. Governments suddenly started governing on the basis that they had an obligation to serve the people. You read the Treaty of Westphalia. Suddenly the notion became, oh no, the government's job is to start improving life. And governments started building schools, and governments started funding science, and governments started paying for astronomy, and governments started doing all kinds of things to try and bring forward historical progress. Governments suddenly understood that it was their obligation to make life better, and they started not just repressing people, but instead unleashing human creativity. And it was that breakthrough that ultimately brought down feudalism, brought about capitalism, pushed forward human progress. You had a spark of statecraft, a spark of human reasoning, that suddenly the government wasn't just supposed to sit back and let the world fall to pieces. The government had an obligation to serve the people. And that's really what built every great civilization. You look at China and Confucius. You look at Greece, Socrates. Every great civilization has had this notion. The state, the government, has an obligation to try and improve the lives of the people, to bring forward human progress, to advance human civilization. That is the basis of a healthy society. The government leading and pushing people to be better, making the population smarter, making the population more productive, giving people something optimistic to believe in, giving some people hope, giving people a reason to wake up in the morning, mobilizing people to march ahead. That is the basis. That is the basis of what drives human progress. Statecraft. The government serving the people, the government leading the people. And liberalism rejects that. The doctrine prevailing in the West now says, oh, no. Can't have that. That's fascist. That's communist. We can't have that. We can't have the state trying to make a better life for people. Oh, no. We can't have people working together to make a better society. Oh, no. We can't be marching ahead, we can't be building a better world. I see it, Austin. We can't be doing that. We can't be doing that. Oh, no, we can't be doing that. Because that's fascist or communist or whatever. No, individualism above all else. Individualism above all else. Right? You have no obligation to anybody. You have no obligation to your country. You have no obligation to society. No obligation to your family. No obligation to your community. You're on your own, buddy. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, sink or swim, do whatever the hell you want. We don't care. You're on your own. Everyone's an atomized individual. Everyone's just an atomized individual on your own, sink or swim. And we wonder why society is falling apart. This is a cancer that destroys civilizations. Right? Freedom is good. I think people should have freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, but at the end of the day, humans exist in groups. They always have. Humans are collective creatures by nature. Right? We define ourselves by the groups that we're in. What makes life pleasurable and meaningful is relationships with other people. Right? Probably some of the best years of my life were when I was living in utter poverty in a basement with 6 or 7, I think, was it 4 or 5 or 6 other people, lived in a basement in Queens and did nothing but political activism all the time, full-time political activism. And I lived in a basement and we had barely anything, but I was part of a group and I was working with other people to promote communism. And we had a goal, and we went out and protested every day, and I went out and sold news. And it was some of the best years of my life. Why? Because I was connected with other people. And that's what so many people long for. You look out at U.S. society today, especially amid this lockdown, 6 feet apart, on your own. No one cares about you. This is the death of civilization. And I am here to say we need another renaissance. Because right now, what Russia and China are doing in Eurasia, building, rising up from poverty, is another renaissance. While we are falling into more liberalism and more chaos and more societal instability, Russia and China are rising. And Venezuela and Bolivia and Nicaragua and Iran and Syria and the anti-imperialist countries of the world that have broken out of this crazed Western mindset, that have governments of action, that fight for the population, that mobilize the people around common goals, they are rising. Now, this isn't traditional Marxism that I'm espousing here. This is certainly different than the doctrinaire, classical Cold War Marxist-Leninist line, right? This is 21st century socialism, right? I study Marx and Lenin a lot. I've spent years and years studying Marx and Lenin. I draw heavily from them. But, I also study Mao. I also study President Xi Jinping. I also study Iran and the Islamic Revolution of Iran and the Shia tradition. I've studied the works of the Bolivarian revolutionaries and Nicaragua and what they've achieved. Look, we need to study all of this. We need to figure out how we can get the United States out of the crisis it's in, how we can march forward. Folks, I've been saying it, I've been beating the drum over and over and over again. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. I want those I want those words everywhere. I want those words everywhere. Everywhere I want those words. We need a government of action to fight for working families. Right? Statecraft must be revived. I'm going to keep saying those words as loudly as I can. Because the only way we're going to get out of this crisis is if human beings once again start working together, if we once again start caring for each other, if we once again put people before profits, and if we start to march ahead. That's what we got to do. It's the only way out of this mess. And that's why I'm on here, right? And I'm not going to give up. I'm over my illness for the most part. I'm back. Sorry that I was away for so long, but I had to recover. Hopefully I'll be on here quite a bit for at least the next week. I'll be doing this quite a bit. I'll be on here. We're going to keep going, folks, because I care about you. You're not alone in this world. It seems like a scary place. This world can be a very scary place. It seems like you're alone. Well, you're not alone. I'm here with you. We're on a mission to save America. We're on a mission really to save socialism from the synthetic left, to save America so that socialism can prevail. And we can have a world without war and profits and greed and destruction. We can have humanity marching forward, achieving great things and unleashing human creativity. That's where I'm at, folks. That's where I'm at. And on that note, I will end my opening remarks. Sense of community and purpose, refute libertarianism. So on that note, folks, names and locations. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations. Who's with us tonight? Who's with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Kendall in San Diego. Madonna says she's glad I'm back. Thanks, Madonna. Very good. Who else is with us? Cleveland Pirate Alex. Wow, okay, here we come. Cleveland Pirate Alex. Jenny Lynn says, hey, Will. Anchorage, Alaska, Arturo. Long Island, New York. Cleveland, Anthony Penza. Robert from Hawaii. Ryan in Oakland, California. Char Darling in Nassau County. Queens, New York, Holly Horn. G in Cincinnati, Chaya in Montreal, Matt in Baltimore, Brazil, West Palm Beach, Florida, Wisconsin, Norway, Miguel in Puerto Rico, Clydesbank, Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati, Nate in Chicago. Bill Maher's segment on China echoes your message, says Days of War. I agree. Watch that Bill Maher segment. Bill Maher is awful, but sometimes, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Sarajevo, Bosnia, West Palm Beach, Florida, Los Angeles, Glasgow, Scotland, Albany, New York, Sup in Texas, Longview, Washington, Elias from Ontario, Adam from Nevada, Massachusetts, Mario from Croatia, Finland, Albany, Minnesota, Marian from the Netherlands, Belize, Australia, Macedonia, Canada, West Palm Beach, Florida, Pennsylvania, USA, Ben in Colorado, Madonna in Iran, San Diego, glad you're back, Tony from Oregon, Soledad, California, Melbourne, Australia, Paragus in Los Angeles, William from the UK, Solidarity from Michigan, Reforms in China, Albany, New York, Jose Gonzalez from Caracas, very good. Glad you're doing okay, says Jose. Very good. Tampa Bay, Florida, Pomona, California, Sweden, Kansas City, Missouri, Marta in Poland, Southampton, UK, Santa Barbara, Peter Schiff, Austin from Massachusetts, hi from Desert, Nevada, Austin in California, Liverpool, UK. Each 5-year plan includes progressive reform, says Red Comrades in China. Great YouTube channel, by the way. Check out Red Comrades in China. Great YouTube channel. Heavy Dukes NYC, Antoine from PCUSA, Io Hillary in New York City. Shout out to Io Hillary. Kieran Fatima from Toronto. Glad I'm back. Well, I'm glad you're back too, Kieran. Ossis from Germany. David Fox, good friend of the program out in Australia. Check out his work with Working Class Revolt. Dust James, Toronto, Canada. Adelaide, Australia. Orlando. Tomorrow and Dario from Brooklyn, welcome. Love to listen, comrade, from Southampton. Trevor in Ireland, Colorado, Detroit, Asheville, North Carolina, Cuperto, Mexico, UK, Southampton, Balthazar, Oakland. Hello, California. Happy for your recovery. Caleb is back in Berlin. Aberdeen, Scotland. Felix from Atlanta, Oklahoma. San Antonio, Texas, fully immunized Kinky. Thanks, Caleb. Bristol, UK. St. David's, Bermuda. Vlad in Romania. Sunny in Naples, Florida. Tampa, Florida, USA, says Herb Bryant. Wow, so many of you here, and I'm so glad you are back. Ithaca, New York, Michael. Shout out to you, Michael. Good friend of the program. Leipzig, East Germany, Etatist. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Wow, so many people. Happy Nowruz and spring to all. Best Nowruz Mubarak wishes to those in Iran. Nowruz Mubarak. Nowruz Mubarak. Hassan from Arabia. Bermuda. Florida. Hallelujah, says Bing 4. Wow, so many of you, and I'm so glad you are all here. Treasure Coast, Florida. Captain Waffles. We've all missed you, comrade. Well, I've missed all of you, and I've got so much to say. And I'm glad you listened to my 1-hour opening remarks. And now, Will Turner in Iowa. Now we've done our roll call. Such an amazing international crowd. So many people from so many different countries. We got Europe in here. We've got Iran. We've got China and Russia and Southeast Asia and South America. I mean, so many people watch these lives. This live is like an international hub. Right? I mean, the conversations we have on here, this is really the future. This is the world coming together, isn't it? I mean, where else do you have a YouTube channel with so many people from all walks of life? I mean, here in the United States, it is so diverse. We got people from Florida and Iowa and New York City and California and Texas. I mean, we got every corner of America on here. We got every corner of the world, Norway, Montreal, China, Iran. I mean, this is something so special here. These lives are really magical. Where else do you get something like this? Seriously, where else in the world do you get broadcasts like this? I mean, where does this happen, right? We're talking about local United States issues. We're talking about global issues. We're talking about ideology. We're talking about history. We're talking about Marxism and socialism and communism. I mean, where else do you get something like this? This is really, really special what we do on here. Do not underestimate the power of these lives. I am blown away. I am just blown away by what we've got here. Our community is on fire. We are doing something really amazing here. I mean, what we do here is just unprecedented. It is just unprecedented. I'm so glad to be back, and I'm so glad that you want me back here. So now I'm going to start going through these many super chats. I've got more unnamed diet beverage right here, so I'll keep drinking it, and I'll keep going through these super chats. Keep them rolling in, right? The more super chat questions, the better. I answer your questions. That's a lot of what people really like on here, is just me just answering your questions. So someone asked, should we read Giovanni Gentile and Nick Land? I don't know who Nick Land is. I know Giovanni Gentile was an ideologue of Italian fascism. And honestly, as much as I don't agree with Giovanni Gentile, I'm not an advocate of fascism, I encourage people to study different ideas. I have studied a lot of thinkers that I don't agree with, right, in order to understand the world. And fascism is a big deal. And if you want to understand what fascism is, you ought to study fascists. I've never read Giovanni Gentile. I have read Oswald Mosley, who was the British fascist. I've read different fascists in the world. I don't agree with them. I think they're dead wrong about a lot of things. But, I would never tell people not to engage with ideas. And I think that, whenever people start doing that and saying, no, don't engage with these ideas, that's not good, right? Not good. I'm fearful capitalism will seek to find a way to obliterate China via nukes. All right. The danger of a new world war. All right. China. Nukes. All right. Wrote it down. Thank you very much for that super chat question. All right. How do you engage with someone who says they are anti-capitalist and anti-communist? Well, first of all, you need to be clear to them about what capitalism actually means, because there's a lot of confusion about capitalism. What is capitalism? I've heard people say, well, capitalism is people being greedy and just wanting money. That's what makes it capitalist. Well, no. I think that in socialist societies, there can be people that want more money than they have. They want higher wages. They want to maybe, people wanting more money is not the definition of what capitalism is. So we need to be very clear on that. That's not what capitalism is. Now, some people say capitalism is just having a division between the rich and poor. Well, that's not good. I'm not for inequality, but that's not what capitalism is. You have to be clear with that person that capitalism is a system where the banks and the factories and the major industries and the major centers of economic power operate according to profit. They function to make profits. As Mao said, capitalism is profits in command. Socialism is the alternative to capitalism. If you get rid of capitalism and you no longer have an economy where profits are in command, but you have a modern economy with modern production and modern technology, right? If you have an economy that's not run according to profits, but is instead run according to some kind of rational plan, that's socialism, right? Or that's the alternative. And, that alternative has been created. The only people that have really created that alternative have been advocates of communism or anti-imperialists, right? We've never seen an anarchist society emerge, right? Never. There was like 2 minutes in Spain or 2 minutes at the Paris Commune or something, but never. Social democracy has never gradually evolved into socialism. We've never seen that, right? So, why, if this person is truly against capitalism, which is the system of profit, production organized for profit, the anarchy of the market, the chaos of the market, the anarchy of production, profits in command, if they're against it, why would they be against the alternative? Now, they can be critical. I'm very critical. I think the Cultural Revolution in China was a disaster. I think that there were a lot of bad things that happened in the Soviet Union. A lot of people went to gulags who didn't deserve to go to gulags. A lot of people were harmed, right? You can be against the various things that have gone on in socialist societies that were not good. But why be against societies breaking out of capitalism, right? I think when societies break out of capitalism and start raising people out of poverty, start organizing the economy rationally, start building and constructing, that's a good thing. So you have to ask this person, why are they anti-communist? Now, maybe they're thinking in the old Cold War way. They're saying, well, unless that communism is, explicitly Marxist, Leninist, and that's the way things are. And maybe you need to say to them, look, the world has changed. China has changed and adjusted. The Bolivarians are very different. They're religious, they're Christians, they've adjusted, socialism for Latin America in a different way. And you need to say, look, you don't have to be a hardline Cold War communist to be against capitalism, right? That there are new forms of socialism in the 21st century. But yeah, you have to be clear what this person about what capitalism is and then what communism is, right? All right. China owes its success to Western investment. Well, no, because there are many countries around the world where there's nothing but Western investment. Nigeria, right? The top oil exporting country in Africa now. Since Libya has been blown up, Nigeria is the top oil exporting country in Africa. All kinds of investment by Chevron and BP and Shell Oil and ExxonMobil, and the country's still dirt poor. There are many countries around the world that are dominated by Western corporations and Western investment, and the people are not wealthy. China, on the other hand, has used Western investment to serve the people. Ukraine-Russia conflict. All right, writing it down. Ukraine-Russia conflict. And so, there are many examples of countries that just have total Western domination of their countries and are not, getting wealthier. China is an example of using Western investment to serve the state's overall plan of making society better. All right, why was the Communist International dissolved? Well, it was dissolved for a couple reasons. The obvious, most basic reason that the Communist International was dissolved was because of the fact that during World War II, the Soviet Union was in an alliance with the United States and with Britain, and it was trying to defeat the fascists. And it was necessary for the global communist movement to make clear that it wasn't trying to destabilize the aligned countries, that the communists of the United States, the communists of Britain, were committed to an alliance with their governments against the fascists and against the Nazis. So they made clear that the communist parties were not part of some global communist movement that was seeking to destabilize the world. Now, that's the basic reason. However, Mao Zedong, when asked about why the Communist International dissolved, he spilled the beans. And you can find this on the Marxist Internet Archive. There's a very good article, from a Chinese newspaper where Mao was asked about the Communist International dissolving, and Mao said, we haven't been listening to the Communist International since 1935, right? That basically the 7th World Congress, which was 1935, that was the last World Congress of the Communist International, basically was a moment where, if you read the speeches of Georgy Dimitrov, who was the leader of the Communist International, he basically says, look, every country is going to have a unique path to socialism. And the communist parties of the world have kind of matured to the point that the idea of having a communist international is no longer necessary, right? After the Russian Revolution, Lenin formed the Communist International. It was a global alliance of communist parties, right? And those parties marched in lockstep to carry out the goals of creating a global communist revolution. And in 1935, when the Communist International launched the Popular Front, at that point they loosened that. They started basically allowing countries around the world to follow their own path. And that was a good move. Right? That in a lot of cases, the directions that the Communist International gave countries were not correct, right? That the Russians should not have been running communist revolutions all over the world. Mao was the genius behind the Chinese Revolution. And Mao had a big fight with these people they called like the 20 Bolsheviks or the 28 Bolsheviks, who were people that were in with Moscow. Mao was the guy who understood how the Chinese Revolution was going to work. Moscow wanted these 20 Bolsheviks, right? And that basically the communists of the world learned that having Russia kind of oversee the communist revolutions around the world was not a good strategy. And that the road to socialism in every country is going to be unique, as the Communist Manifesto says, right? These measures are different in different countries. And that basically having a communist international, while it's good to have communists around the world talking to each other, having relations with each other, it's good to have global communist gatherings like the World Festival of Youth and Students or the International Women's Congress or the World, what is it called? The International Seminar of Communist and Workers' Parties. It's good for communists to talk to each other and have relationships with each other. But every country is going to have a unique road to socialism. So the idea of having a strict international body that tells every communist party around the world what to do is not a good idea. And that after the Seventh World Congress in 1935, the Communist International loosened itself. It wasn't overseeing and directing what every communist party around the world had done. And when Mao was very happy when the Chinese Communist Party was no longer part of the Communist International, because he said, look, we haven't been obeying the Communist International since 1935. And that the communists around the world have kind of matured. Now, after World War II, there was something called the Communist Information Bureau, Cominform. But again, that wasn't Moscow telling every communist party in the world what to do. It was just kind of an information bureau. It was like a news service, right? And that, even today, there are international communist alliances. But there is no communist international. And that's one thing, a lot of Trotskyites have it in their mind that we need a fourth international or a fifth international. I don't agree with them. I think the road to socialism is unique in every country. And I don't want to, if I were an activist and the leader of a big revolutionary movement in the United States, I wouldn't want Moscow or Beijing to tell me what to do. I would want to meet and be friendly with the communists of Moscow, be friendly with the communists of Beijing, be friendly with the communists of Cuba, learn from them. But I would, at the end of the day, this is my country, and we're going to do socialism in our own way, right? Every country has its unique road to socialism, and that the Communist International was a little bit too controlling, and that some of the decisions the Communist International made, especially in the early 1930s, had negative effects, and that the world needed to move on. It was not, they didn't need the Communist International anymore. Plus, the Communist International created this illusion that communism was a conspiracy, and that made Britain and the United States distrustful of the Soviet Union in World War II. So they dissolved to make clear, look, we don't have some foreign conspiracy. We're not, and that was the right thing to do, right? I think that was the right thing to do. Dissolving the Comintern was the right decision. I think it was the right decision. I think it was correct. All righty. So there you go. Left libertarians. Well, look, okay, so within the socialist movement, there have been three major currents within anti-capitalist thought, right? Since the time of Karl Marx, you've had basically three trends of anti-capitalist thinking. The first is social democracy, or reformism. And that's the idea that socialism gradually just kind of emerges from capitalism. All right? That's social democracy. The idea is that capitalism just kind of naturally turns into socialism one step at a time, right? Edward Bernstein, who coined the term revisionism, he said, the movement is everything, but the goal is nothing, right? The idea is that capitalism just over the course of time, one day everyone can vote, the next day we create universal public schools, and the next day after that we have national health care, and socialism just kind of emerges out of capitalism. It's just the sum of reforms. Capitalism gets reformed, and eventually you get socialism. That's called social democracy, and it's pro-imperialist. It generally views the Western capitalist countries as the most advanced, and so therefore it's imperialist. That's social democracy. Then you have communism. And communism, or Marxism, right? Marxism, Leninism, communism, that says, no. It's not about gradually implementing reforms. No. It's about the seizure of political power, that there is an event horizon, that the state, one day the state is in the hands of the capitalists. We want to seize control of the state and make it a socialist state. There needs to be a revolution, and that the state needs to change hands. The working class needs to seize control of the state and start making a new kind of state to serve the working class. That it's not simply a struggle to reform the capitalist system one bit at a time. It's a struggle to seize political power and then use the political power to create a socialist society. right? And that's the revolutionary Marxist movement. That's Marxism-Leninism. That's 21st century socialism. That's the revolutionary movement, and it's anti-imperialist. It says that imperialism is holding back development around the world, and that countries around the world should break free from the domination of Western capitalism. So that's Marxism, Leninism, communism. That's the revolutionary movement, right? So you have the reformists, the social democrats. You have the revolutionary movement. Then you have this other trend that has long existed that, people call it libertarian socialism, people call it anarchism, it's been called free communism, that argues, oh no, it's not about reforming capitalism. It's definitely not about seizing the political power. It's about, basically creating voluntary communities that will gradually replace capitalism as capitalism falls apart. And it's the ultra left school that rejects all political power, right? Um, the social democrats want to engage in politics to gradually reform. The revolutionaries want to seize political power and take control of the state. Um, the anarchist current rejects all political action. There's anarcho-syndicalism, which is the idea that all that matters is class struggle on the job. All that matters is the labor union movement, right? And that it's, don't vote, don't propose legislation. It's about building labor unions, the syndicalists, the labor movement, and eventually the workers will seize their factories, and politics, seizing control of governments, that's just a distraction. It's about the class struggle on the job. That's syndicalism. There's also the left adventurist current that argues that it'll be a spontaneous rebellion of the people, and that we're going to inspire this spontaneous rebellion of the people by committing some kind of violent or terrorist act, right? And we'll blow something up or we'll kill somebody, and that'll inspire a spontaneous rebellion of the people that will tear apart capitalism. And then you have kind of the voluntarist community, right? They say, well, we're gonna form a worker cooperative or a utopian community. And we'll just build it, and as capitalism falls apart, our utopian society will flourish. This is the ultra left deviation, right? It's Bakunin, it's Proudhon, it's who else? I mean, this is the ultra left deviation in the movement. Social democrats are the right wing reformist deviation, and anarchists historically are the ultra leftist deviation, right? Now, this is how the Marxist movement has always seen things, right? You have the reformist element and you have the ultra leftist element. This is the traditional thing. There's something else walking around on the internet these days. I'm not going to name names. You guys know who I'm talking about. These, I don't know what you want to call them, kids basically, that call themselves libertarian socialists, and they are not that ultra-leftist element. I mean, Bakunin would spit on these people. Bakunin would laugh at these people. These are overgrown children who know absolutely nothing about Marxism. And they don't know what they think. They just, anyone who believes in actual socialism is a fascist. What, if you defend Cuba or Venezuela or China, you're a fascist, you're a crypto-Nazi. And socialism just means that all the big companies have have an employee stock ownership program, right? And that they definitely don't want the government to do anything. They don't want, a minimum wage. They agree with libertarians, and they don't even really know what they want. They're just stupid skater punk kids, and they don't know what they're talking about, right? And I really don't consider them to be a continuation of the anarchist trend. Emma Goldman is an anarchist. Bakunin, is an anarchist. These kind of ultra-leftist trends have always been around. These skater punks on the internet that are like everyone, and their politics consists of they're pro-trans, and all Republicans are Nazis. And if you don't agree with their we must riot in the streets for the liberals against Trump. If you don't agree with that, you must be a Nazi. If you put forward an actual leftist program, you must be a Nazi. Everyone they don't like is a Nazi. Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. Everyone's a Nazi. All leftists who don't agree with them, all leftists who don't support war and, are not, repeating anti-Russian or anti-Chinese propaganda are Nazis, and riot in the streets against Republicans, and they're pro-trans, and they love to do drugs, and they love porno, and they play lots of video games. And this is an insult to the memory of Emma Goldman. Emma Goldman was a serious revolutionary who was from that ultra-leftist deviation, right? Who else, right? There's many great revolutionaries in American history who unfortunately were part of the ultra-left trend, the Wobblies, the IWW. They were syndicalists. They did not vote. They did not try to seize political power. They were all just about class struggle on the job. I don't agree with them, but, William Z. Foster was at one point a wobbly and a syndicalist, right? Joe Hill. There were many great people within that ultra-leftist deviation, right? And some of them grew up and became communists later. Some of them didn't. But, but comparing video game playing, cussing, everyone who doesn't repeat propaganda against socialist states is actually a Nazi. Yeah, comparing these left book loser punk kids to Emma Goldman and Joe Hill is an insult, okay? And so I don't really want to there's a lot of people on the internet calling themselves libertarian socialists who have nothing in common with Bakunin or Kropotkin. Mao was at one point a follower of Peter Kropotkin. Before Mao joined the Chinese Communist Party, he was part of a group called the New People's Studies Society, and they were Kropotkinists. And in Russia, there was the Kropotkinist current, right? The Social Revolutionary Party, the Narodniks, right? They were a big Kropotkinist current, right? This is a form of socialist thinking, right? Just like you have your social democrats and your communists, you also have your ultra-lefts. And so we should be clear about what this is. And these skater punk kids on the internet who have never read a book in their lives, but get their orientation from the New York Times and from mainstream media, and don't really have politics beyond, they're pro-trans and Republicans are Nazis, and if you don't agree with me, you must be an effing fascist. They're punks. They're losers and they're punks, and they have nothing in common with the ultra-lefts historically. So that's the answer there. I'm sorry to be crass. I apologize for putting out so much negativity, because I don't want to be negative. I'm not on here to be negative, to put other people down, but these people put me down a lot, and they've spread all kinds of nasty lies about me all over the internet. They distort my positions. So they can, I'm just being real. All right. All right. Now, someone asked me to criticize the Black Panther movement. I'm reluctant to criticize the Black Panthers because really, folks, there's really only been, since the end of World War I, there have only been two organizations in U.S. history that really mattered, okay, that were communists. And that was the Black Panthers and the Communist Party USA. The Communist Party USA of the 1930s was amazing, and it did amazing work. The Black Panthers of the 1960s and 70s were amazing and did amazing work. Everybody else is pretty irrelevant. The Trotskyites, they did the Minneapolis Teamsters strike of 1934. It's like one thing they did is they built the Teamsters Union. Good thing. I'll give them that. There were here and there, in Detroit, the Maoists in Detroit, the new communist movement, they did some good stuff here and there. But for the most part, the Communist Party USA of the 1930s and the Black Panthers, they mattered. They were amazing. And they did the kind of revolutionary work they did is stuff that nobody in the United States right now is doing anywhere near what they did. So you're asking me to criticize the Black Panther movement, and it's like I almost don't want to do that because it's like they are so much better than everything else that has existed in U.S. society since then, okay? The Black Panther Party was a household name. They were in every major city. They captured the imagination of millions of people. They had a free breakfast program. They engaged in armed self-defense. They were so many levels above everything that the Marxist left in the United States has done since then. So criticizing them is almost painful for me to do. So you're asking me to criticize them. I would encourage you to read the writings of Huey Newton, because Huey Newton, who was the leader of the Black Panther Party and the founder, criticized the Black Panther Party quite a bit. I would encourage you to read Mumia Abu-Jamal's memoir, We Want Freedom, A Life in the Black Panther Party. He criticizes the Black Panther Party quite a bit. There's other figures who were in the Black Panther Party and have admitted some of the flaws that went on. The main thing that happened that you have to understand, and many people don't know about this. I hear histories of the Black Panther Party that don't talk about this. There was a split, a very important split in the Black Panther Party in 1969 and 1970. Eldridge Cleaver and Huey Newton split, and it was the East Coast versus the West Coast. Huey Newton was on the West Coast, Eldridge Cleaver was on the East Coast, and there was a split in the Black Panther Party. And Eldridge Cleaver was an advocate of left adventurism and terrorism, and he split the Black Panther Party, right? And for a while, people referred to Black Panther Party Cleaver and Black Panther Party Newton. And Eldridge Cleaver was wrong. Eldridge Cleaver engaged in ultra-left adventurism and terrorism. He engaged in attempting to start what he called urban guerrilla warfare, and it was a disaster. And it resulted in a huge police state clampdown on the Black Panthers. It was a disaster. What Eldridge Cleaver did, I mean, he ended up in exile, and he just lived in exile until he came back to the United States and became a Republican. But it was a nightmare, and it was wrong. And Huey Newton called for what he called survival pending revolution, the free breakfast program, ambulance services, community organizing, building an alliance with all kinds of different forces in the community, gang truces and a rainbow coalition, some of the work that Fred Hampton did. So that split is very important. The fact that people have it in their minds the Black Panthers were a bunch of terrorists. They weren't, right? At the beginning, they did their armed self-defense, their armed patrols in the Black community, which captured the imagination and inspired people. But after that, they took a strategic turn to the masses. And when they took their strategic turn to the masses, feeding people, engaging in community organization, having an alliance with the Revolutionary Youth Movement too. They rejected the Weathermen and the Weathermen street fighting, but they had an alliance with Mike Klonsky and with Bob Avakian, and with the Communist Workers' Party, and with Youth Against War and Fascism and the Workers' World Party, and building an alliance, and building the Young Lords organization, and building the Gay Liberation Front among gay people, and the Brown Berets among the Chicano people. That the Black Panther Party did amazing revolutionary work after that split. But that was a very important moment, that when Eldridge Cleaver launched his ultra-leftist, adventurous, terrorist campaign, the Black Panthers rejecting that was very important. And people don't know that history. If you read the history of the Black Panther Party, a lot of people don't acknowledge that important split, and that's very important. So, I will say, there have been many women who criticized the way women were treated in the Black Panther Party. And I think, Elaine Brown, who was the first woman to be the chairwoman of the Black Panther Party, she's written about this. There were certainly issues with the way women were treated, and that there was, sexual harassment and sexual assault that went on, and that's wrong. That's never excusable. There were definitely problems with that. The group was under attack by the government, the FBI, and just like any group, when they're under attack, they sometimes can become very rigid and authoritarian. And there were some authoritarian practices that went on in the Black Panther Party. That there's rumors. It's not confirmed, but there's talk of like corporal punishment being implemented and whippings and things like that, and that's not acceptable. That's not what revolutionary organizations should be doing. There's criticism that can be made, but I almost don't want to make those criticisms, because what the Black Panthers did in terms of building a mass movement of millions of people, in terms of embedding themselves in communities, and in terms of being really anti-imperialist, being tied to Gaddafi, being tied to the Soviet Union and Cuba and China and Korea. I mean, what they did was so utterly amazing, that any criticism I have is like pales in comparison to the criticism I have of the million irrelevant little ultra-leftist groups that are out there calling themselves communists now. So, I met Elaine Brown years ago when I was working in Cleveland around some prisoners and a prison case I was working around. I met Elaine Brown, and there's different critiques of her, and I don't get into it. But she impressed me. I was impressed with Elaine Brown. She seemed like a very dynamic organizer. A very dynamic organizer, full of energy, and she could carry a crowd. She was a very good speaker, and she had been the first woman leader of the Black Panther Party, and being able to facilitate an event for her in Cleveland to raise money around a prison struggle I was working on was a very rewarding experience. I have a very high opinion of Elaine Brown, and I've seen, again, she's a real organizer who's done real work and studied real revolutionary ideology. So yeah, there you go. That was years. It's been years since I met Elaine Brown, but it was, the 2 or 3 days I spent around Elaine Brown was certainly something special. I'll tell you that much. Alrighty. Alrighty. My position on the independence of Catalonia and Scotland. Well, look, I was very excited about Scottish independence back in 2014. When it was kind of an anti-austerity struggle. But as I follow what's been going on in the UK, the SNP, things are no longer what they once were. I listen to what Jyoti Brar and what George Galloway are saying about what's going on in Scotland and what's going on where the SNP seems to be all about getting back into the EU. It's whipping up kind of a xenophobic hysteria against English people, and it looks not good. And I'm disappointed with what the SNP has become. I don't know enough about the Catalonia situation, but based on the way the SNP has conducted itself, the Scottish National Party has conducted itself recently, I no longer am supporting Scottish independence. I don't think Scottish independence now. I kind of take that back. I think that, that it looks like the movement for Scottish independence has gone in kind of a very bad direction. Imran Khan. Imran Khan. All right. So there you go. Alrighty. Radlib's transphobic Galloway. Look, people need to get over this belief that everyone you talk to has to agree with you on everything, and this guilt by association, right? George Galloway is an amazing human being. Nobody in British politics has stood up so strongly for Palestine, so strongly against the Iraq War, so strongly against Islamophobia, so strongly for working families and their right. He is an amazing, dynamic figure. Now, if you don't agree with him on the trans stuff, that's fine, right? You can disagree with him. But this notion that everyone must immediately adopt your position on politics or else they're canceled, and anyone who doesn't denounce them is just as guilty as they are. Grow up, okay? Right? Grow up. Just grow up, all right? And that, that there are many people, that I've associated with over the years that I don't agree with on many things. I am proud of the fact that I got to attend the New Horizon Conference in Iran with leaders of the Nation of Islam, right? And do I agree with the Nation of Islam? No, I don't, right? Their religion is not my religion. Their view on a lot of different things is not my view. But I know they're a very important organization in the Black community. I know that they're anti-imperialist. And so to be able to attend an international conference in Iran dedicated to the Black freedom struggle with members of this very important, organization led by Louis Farrakhan is a great honor to me, right? And if you're going to get real work done in the real world, you have to be able to shake hands with people you might not agree with on a lot of things. You have to be able to put aside your differences. You have to be able to find common ground. If you want to just be on the internet and complain and feel like you're better than everybody else, and that's one thing. But if you want to get things done in the real world, you have to make alliances. You have to be strategic, right? And that means that you might not always agree with people. There are many people that I don't agree with that I'm very proud to associate with. That's the end of the day. Look, I think Dr. Martin Luther King was an amazing figure. an amazing figure in U.S. history, especially in the final years of his life. He was denouncing capitalism. He was talking about the evils of American imperialism in Vietnam. But was Dr. Martin Luther King wrong about Israel? You betcha. Dr. Martin Luther King was a huge supporter of Israel, a huge Zionist. And he was wrong on that, you know? He was wrong. Malcolm X was absolutely right to be critical of Israel and to oppose Israel. I don't think Israel is a good force in the world. Dr. Martin Luther King was different. He thought Israel was good. Well, we disagree, you know, but that doesn't take away all the amazing stuff that Dr. Martin Luther King did, right? I mean, I still think Dr. Martin Luther King was amazing. If Dr. Martin Luther King were still alive and he asked me to go to his event and give a speech, I would go in a second. I would immediately go. And, you know, and I wouldn't immediately go, okay, Dr. Martin Luther King, I'll go to your event, but don't think that I support Israel. Everyone know I don't agree with Dr. Martin Luther King about Israel. Just so you know, like, I'm going to this, but Dr. Martin Luther King, I don't agree with him about Israel. I don't play that game. Grow up, people. Grow up. Grow up. That's not how adults act. If you're the kind of person who Dr. Martin Luther King would call them up and ask them to speak at an event about the struggle for black people's rights and you know, against war. If Dr. Martin Luther King called you up to speak at an anti-war rally he was organizing, and you wouldn't go because, well, if I go there, people might think I support Israel. That's stupid. That's cancel culture. Get over it. Dr. Martin Luther King was amazing in many ways. He was amazing in so many ways. And he had a position on Israel that I vehemently disagree with. But I can still recognize that Dr. Martin Luther King was an amazing figure in American history. That's that, right? And that's this cancel culture where someone makes one mistake and it's like you have to denounce them. Get over it. Get over it. Get over it. You know what I'm saying? George Galloway is amazing. I have nothing but huge admiration for him. Do I agree with him on every question? No, I don't, right? I mean, you know, he's got plenty of positions I disagree with. But you're not expected to agree with everything someone says in order to admire the amazing work that they do. And that applies to all kinds of people. So these rad libs, they're never going to do anything. They're going to sit on the internet and cancel people and you know, feel good about themselves. And so don't worry about it. Be bold, be brave. You're better than that. You're better than that. You are better than cancel culture. You're better than it. You're stronger than it. You have more potential. I believe in you. I believe in you. You have the potential to build a new society in America. You have the potential to actually get some real work done and change the world. So I believe in you. You're better than that. And get over it. Just get over it. All right. All right. Competing definitions of freedom. And that's in reference to China. All right. Now we're switching to unnamed orange beverage. Oh boy. The ice has melted. There you go. Very watered down, unnamed orange beverage. But look, you know, I guess the only thing I'll say about the only thing I'll say about competing definitions of freedom is, you know, every year the United States puts out its human rights report on China, and so in response, every year, the Chinese put out their human rights report on the United States, criticizing U.S. human rights. It's like their rebuttal. Read the reports, right? Read the Chinese report on human rights in the United States. And there are things that we don't think of as human rights that China criticizes the United States on. For example, you know, gun control. They say the fact that there are mass shootings in the United States is a violation of our rights. Right, that the government has an obligation to stop, you know, these mass shootings, and the fact that the government, you know, is not, you know, doing what's necessary to stop people, to stop crazy people from getting guns and going to school and shooting their classmates is a violation of our human rights. Well, we don't think of human rights in those terms in the United States. They look at the United States and say, look, the United States is such a wealthy country compared to China. I mean, the amount of wealth here, but yet you still have people that are, you know, that are hungry. You still have, you know, I mean, that's a violation of rights, right? And that there are different understandings of what constitute human rights. So that's all I'll say about that. But I have no idea how to apply the method of Marxism in organizing in my community. Advice. All right. Method of Marxism. Organizing. Community. All right. Very good. I will answer that for sure. All right. So good to be back. Someone asked about socialism in Africa. Well, look, and they said other than Libya, which is, I've published my own edition of the Green Book by Muammar Gaddafi, and Islamic socialism in Libya had many successes. But they asked about other than that, what are an example of socialism in Africa? Well, look, all of Southern Africa, right, at this point, right? South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Mozambique. These countries are led by nominally communist parties, MPLA in Angola. These are Marxist-Leninist parties. Now, they're very big, and there's, in a lot of these parties, you have a blatantly neoliberal faction, and you have a blatantly Marxist-Leninist faction. You tend to have a pro-Chinese faction and a pro-US faction. Angola is a great example of that. Angola, you have the MPLA, which, is the ruling party of Angola, which was the Marxist-Leninist party, which is still very closely aligned with Cuba. Since the end of the Civil War in Angola, there was a huge civil war backed by the United States. The United States funded crazy terrorists and extremists, Jonas Savimbi, a literal cannibal who ate people, a crazy terrorist extremist, to wage decades of civil war against the socialist government of Angola. But after the Civil War ended, 2002, you finally had peace in Angola. And Angola suddenly had a huge explosion of growth. And Isabel dos Santos, she oversaw huge amounts of poverty alleviation, huge expansion of access to education, building of railroads and infrastructure, working with China and Russia. They did some amazing stuff. Now, there's different factions in Angola, right? Not all of the MPLA are Marxists, right? There's a lot of people in the MPLA that are, pro-neoliberal, pro-Western, but the MPLA is historically a Marxist-Leninist communist party. It became much more social democratic in the 90s, and, there is a blatantly pro-Western, wing that wants neoliberalism, and then there is the more, hardline communist wing, that is more pro-Russian and China, right? Zimbabwe, right? In Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, you remember, they overthrew the settler colonial state of Rhodesia. They established, Zimbabwe, and they signed the Lancaster House Agreement, which was the treaty that they signed, which said there would be no redistribution of property for 10 years. And so they upheld that. For 10 years, they did not redistribute the land. They did not redistribute any property. But after 10 years, they started redistributing land to the African people. And there was a land redistribution program. And that's when U.S. media went into overdrive and started saying Mugabe was a dictator, and it was the sanctions were imposed on Zimbabwe, and it was all of this. Well, if you look at Zimbabwe, they've done a lot to, wipe out illiteracy in the country. They have a very high literacy rate. And there has been some success due to the land redistribution. A lot of African farm families have gotten their own land, and there were certainly extreme difficulties at the beginning. But now there's Chinese investment. They've built a hotel near Victoria Falls, the world's biggest waterfall. I've met with folks from Zimbabwe. The diamond mines have been nationalized. There have been some achievements. Now, there have been some big difficulties as well because they face sanctions, and it's a dirt poor country. It's a very, very poor country. But, it's a Marxist-Leninist party, ZANU-PF, Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front. It's friendly to China and Russia, and they're trying to raise their people out of poverty. And similar things could be said about Mozambique. Similar things could be said about South Africa. There's big problems in South Africa. But, again, these are underdeveloped countries. These are deeply impoverished countries where, they got their liberation almost simultaneously. Well, at least South Africa got its liberation almost simultaneously as the fall of the Soviet Union.